Yields back. The gentleman from New York, Ranking Member Mr. Nadler, is recognized.
I thank the chairman for yielding. Mr. Dunn, again, I want to express my sincerest condolences to you and your family, and I want to thank you for being here today. Judge Samaniego, I want to turn to you. Thank you so much for coming today. Having a witness who has grown up and lived on the border is so imperative. Your knowledge and lived experience are invaluable for policymakers here in Washington. Unfortunately, the Republican majority seems interested only in showboating. They continuously talk about a so-called Biden border crisis, even though this administration has actually kept in place numerous policies from the Trump administration that many of my colleagues and I have expressed concerns about. Judge Samaniego, in your testimony, you note safety and compassion are not mutually exclusive. I think this is a very important point. As Republican Representative Tony Gonzalez stated over the weekend, border security and immigration are two separate topics. One can be for a strong border security presence that prevents terrorists, fentanyls, and bad actors from entering our country, and one can be for welcoming future Americans in through the front door. Judge Samaniego, can you discuss how El Paso has balanced these two competing dynamics, ensuring the safety of its citizens while also being compassionate toward migrants?
Thank you. One of the things that we recognized is our collaboration. We're not reacting at this point. We've been working 4 years. Almost every Friday we meet with law enforcement, we meet with Border Patrol, the diocese, the NGOs, and we know that by doing what we do right, the whole nation benefits from that. If we do not process the migrants properly, then it falls on other cities. I think El Paso is extremely focused on the fact that we're not a community, but a part of a nation. And if we do not do the right things, then New York gets hit and other communities get hit simply by the fact that there's an unorganized process. Our strategy is really very organized, very compassionate, and making sure that we get individuals in the right place at the right time. And so when we have someone like from New York that comes to El Paso, the mayor, to tell us to help him through this process, obviously, that's why we're there. Our impact is not just on our community. Our impact, I believe, it's on the values of our Constitution, the values, in my case, as a Democrat, and then we make sure that we're helping the rest of the country. We don't do things right, and I can guarantee you that the impact is going to fall on the other cities around the country.
Thank you. We keep hearing from our Republican colleagues that the border is open and that Biden caused this crisis. Could you comment on this?
Well, we don't see that. We process every individual that comes through. We make sure we coordinate. We get a lot of information. And I must emphasize, it was the Border Patrol and the federal government that asked us to step up as a community. And when we don't do the right things, it backs up their system. They start getting more and more people. The detention centers are extremely limited compared to what a community can do. So either you put the pressure on the federal government or you put the pressure on a community that has, almost 14 sites where we could get people sheltered. We can process people, like I said, 35 to 40% are individuals that already have a sponsor, they have money, and they can move into the communities and other communities. We get a lot of calls of a lot of states and cities throughout the country that want migrants. And if we do the right thing and we process them, then we could get the migrants to them as well as to help our community. And we talk about three things. It's safety, which is extremely important for our community, humanitarianism, and the economy. We do not do things right, and I can guarantee you it impacts the entire economy. We've seen it when things begin strained and the movement of product doesn't come into the country. We get hit extremely hard. We get a lot of calls about not moving traffic properly, and we're one of the largest movers of products in the whole country. So we do things right, and I feel that everybody gains from our efforts.
Thank you. One of the topics you touched on in your testimony is the need for all levels of government and nonprofits to work together to effectively process the migrants who are crossing the border. Do you have a good relationship with Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Customs and Border Protection? And can you discuss how often you coordinate with them?
Every once a month we help. Well, one of the missing elements is that we don't get support from the state. And if we had the three, you need the local government, you need the federal government, And the missing component, and because of political reasons, we don't get that third part of the stool. And that is extremely, extremely important to us. We need their support. We don't need militia. We don't need policing. Our strategy has been extremely effective without using law enforcement. And we suffer tremendously by not having the proper support from the state government.
Thank you. My time has expired. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since President Biden took office, we have seen a tremendous surge in the terrorist watch list arrests at the southern border. There were 2 terrorist watch list arrests in fiscal year 2017, 6 in 2018, 0 in 2019, 3 in 2020. In 2021, President Biden's first year in office, terror watch list arrests surged to 15. In 2022, there were 98 terrorists arrested at the southern border. In this fiscal year so far, there have been 38 arrests. According to Border Patrol, there have been approximately 1.2 million known gotaways since President Biden took office. In November alone, 73,000 border crossers evaded overwhelmed Border Patrol agents, but were detected by other forms of surveillance. These crossers are known as gotaways. Often these border crossers are evading being caught by Border Patrol because they have a criminal record or contraband to hide, unlike most migrants who cross with the explicit intention to meet Border Patrol. But today I want to ask about other sinister news in the immigration space. I have a copy here of an email circulated last Thursday, January 26th, at Mount Pleasant High School in Rhode Island. Its assistant principal, Stephanie Harvey, someone with a doctorate in education, is fundraising among its faculty and staff to pay a debt to a cartel that trafficked a student. The email, calling it an urgent matter, reads, "We have a student who came to America with Coyote, which is a group that helps people. This group gives you a time frame to make a payment of $5,000 to those who bring them into the States. Our student needs our urgent support to raise another $2,000 to meet his goal of $5,000 by February 1st, 2023. Sheriff, is this helpful?
I'm sorry, sir?
Is this helpful to have faculty raising money to pay a Mexican cartel to bring someone into the country?
Congressman, no.
Okay. The ranking member said that many of President Trump's policies have been continued. Is the fence continuing to be built on the southern border?
No.
Is the Remain in Mexico policy being continued?
No.
Is the agreement with the Northern Triangle countries to immediately deport illegal immigrants who come into this country, has that policy been continued?
No.
Sheriff, let me ask you something. We now have in this country 2 million individuals who have gone through the entire process and have been adjudicated for removal. In other words, they came to this country, they applied for asylum, they weren't entitled to asylum, they came here for economic reasons, so they went through, they had due process, they have been adjudicated, they have been ordered removed, and the President of the United States has instructed ICE not to seek those individuals and remove them from the country. 2 million. What's the impact of an order like that in terms of welcoming people who are coming to this country for all the wrong reasons?
Well, Congressman, that's one of the things that has changed with the 2 administrations that I've seen is the former president had a very strong message.
When you say former president, President Trump?
Yes, sir. That if you come to the country, you break our laws, there's consequences. Under the current one, that's not being, the rule of law is not being fulfilled.
Okay, and I guess just to further that a little bit, the impact on individuals that are considering coming to this country, when they know if they come to this country, there's going to be a consequence, a negative consequence for them, or, and I'm not even talking about a welcome mat. We welcome immigrants to this country. We welcome people who want to go through the process the right way, who want legal immigration. But when they know that they're coming to this country and there is no consequence to come to this country illegally, and even when they lose in court and they are ordered removed, the United States won't remove them under this administration, and there is this hope for an amnesty program to go through Congress, or informally, as President Obama did, and this president will probably do the same thing, issue an executive order with the stroke of a pen to give people amnesty. What is the impact on people being attracted to this country for all the wrong reasons?
Well, Congressman, there's a couple. Number one is they keep coming, and we're seeing that on the border. Number two, it's a fracture of our rule of law, the oath that I take, you all take, and share it. And last but not least is it's an insult to all law enforcement, state, local, and federal, trying to do our best to secure this border.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman for yielding.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I have two articles that I'd like to offer for the record. One from Fox News, published January 28th, and another one published December 1st.
Without objection, they'll be entered into the record. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me just thank you, Mr. Dunn, for your compelling testimony and offer my deepest sympathy and prayers for your family and your lost son. All of us feel that way on this days. I just, you know, it's important to note that I think every member of this committee wants to have order at the border. We want laws that can be enforced, but we also need to take a good look at really what's happening. And if you take a look at who's coming into the United States without benefit of a visa, it's a mix. Some individuals are coming from communist countries like Venezuela or Nicaragua or Cuba, and they're coming to seek asylum because they've been persecuted. That's permitted under immigration law, and yet the numbers have made it difficult to process that in an orderly way. Some are coming, just like my grandparents, because for economic reasons. They want to have a better life for them and their family, and there's really, in most cases, no way for that to happen in a lawful manner. And some are bad guys, and especially they're coming through more rural areas, and I think that's why the sheriff is seeing what he's seeing. And I think it's important as we think about what to do and what strategies that will be effective, we need to think about those different categories of individuals. We spend more money today on the Border Patrol than ever before in the history of the country. We spend more money on immigration enforcement than all other federal law enforcement combined. So it's not as if we're unwilling to pay for enforcement, but I note that the wall that some feel will be the answer, on average, was breached last year once every 11 minutes. It was breached over 4,000 times. So I don't know that that's really the answer that people think it is. Now, taking a look at the Cubans and the Nicaraguans and the Venezuelans, for example, the administration created a parole program just recently for a safe and organized process for migrants seeking protection as asylum seekers. And when they did, the number of people coming irregularly dropped. My understanding is that between the ports of entry, individuals seeking asylum from those countries dropped 97%. And if you put yourself in the place of that individual, if there's a way to get safe haven, you're going to take that rather than risk your life, you know, walking through the jungle. What we don't have is reform of the immigration laws that would give some opportunity for people seeking economic advancement to have a hope that that could happen. And I think that's really on us, on the Congress. In this last Congress and the Congress before that, we had a Farm Workforce Modernization Act. It got broad support, a big bipartisan vote in the Congress. It died in the Senate. But we know that more than half the farm workers in the United States are undocumented, and yet we need farm workers in the country. If there's a way to have an orderly system, I think that would help us a lot as a country. And so we all want order at the border. We want, you know, a humanitarian crisis is not best solved at the border. We need to take a look, and I've urged that not just the United States, but other Western Hemisphere countries work together to try and bring stability to the 3 countries in Central America that are really the origin of many of those fleeing. And we have not succeeded at that. So let me just close with this, Judge. You've seen the people coming in to your city. Have you, why are they coming to the United States, the people that you've met in your city?
Well, they're extremely passionate. I wish most of our citizens had the passion and the desire to be in our country like they do. I've heard a lot of different stories. One of them is the fact that they stand up for their rights in their country, and then they're persecuted because of that. They're asked not to do those kinds of things, like they
Right.
get targeted. I get a lot of them telling me that they're still. Their parents will call and say, they go to my house every single day and find out where I'm at. And so they're very passionate about coming here, extremely passionate about working. They all say the same thing, that they're very willing and able to work here in the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see my time has expired.
Lady yields back. The gentleman from Louisiana is recognized, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dunn, we mourn the loss of your son, Noah, and hundreds of thousands of other victims and families who have been irreparably damaged by this catastrophe. I would note that, of course, China and the Mexican drug cartels are taking full advantage of this wide-open southwest border. We all know that. That's what the testimony reflects. We've recorded record amounts of deadly fentanyl that are coming into American neighborhoods all over the country. Last year alone, over 100,000 Americans died of a drug overdose, and the fentanyl poisoning is a key component of that, and we know it. My questions are going to be for the sheriff, but I just want to recount a couple of facts here so that everybody back home can take account. Since President Biden took office, U.S. Customs and Border Protection officials have encountered over 4.5 million illegal aliens across the southwest border. It's been said a few times. We're going to say it repeatedly today. The number is disastrous. If we do not have a border, we do not have a nation. We cannot maintain our sovereignty and security if we don't have a border. But nearly 1.7 million of those illegal aliens encountered across the southwest border have been released into America's communities. They're coming into my community, my state, and all of ours. It's all over the country now. During fiscal year 2022, CBP encountered 2,378,000 plus illegal aliens, the most in any single year. That broke the record from 2021, which is the second largest number. Just during December 2022, CBP encountered 251,487 illegal aliens crossing the border. It's the highest number ever encountered in a single month. The point is, this gets worse and worse and worse. And why is that? Well, because the Biden administration has been reversing the vast majority of the Trump administration's successful border enforcement policies, and they are systematically, they are intentionally, Secretary Mayorkas and his administration, they are dismantling immigration enforcement. They are encouraging illegal immigration, encouraging it, inviting people to come here. That's been happening for the last 2 years. It's beyond refute. That's what the evidence shows. That's what everybody can see who cares to pay attention to this. They've terminated the construction of the border wall. The Biden administration issued orders restricting immigration officers' ability to arrest, detain, and remove aliens who violate U.S. law. I can go on and on and on and on. But Sheriff Daniels, you've been in law enforcement for nearly 4 decades. You testified, you gave some very compelling testimony this morning about all the problems that you've encountered. And the question is, have you tried to share those concerns with the Biden administration? And if so, how did the administration respond?
Yes, thank you, Congressman. We actually have, on behalf of National Sheriff Association, I chair border security for national sheriffs, but our national sheriff senior leadership has attempted through letters to reach out to President Biden. He's been invited to our events with major county sheriffs, western sheriffs, southwest border, and national. We have never got a response back from this president. In fact, I was told just a couple months ago, he's the first president not to meet with sheriffs in this country. And he still has not to date, to my knowledge. Second to that is we did meet with Secretary Mayorkas. We reached out. I assembled about a dozen sheriffs. We met in El Paso. We sat down with the secretary. We gave him a 16-point action plan to share, to look at, we thought were common sense, humanitarian and public safety, national security objectives built within that. Never heard back. I asked the secretary where that plan was, what they were going to do with it. He asked me what plan. So long story short is we've never got a response back from the secretary.
It's an absolute dereliction of duty. It is inexcusable. And because of Secretary Mayorkas and the Biden administration's abandonment of any semblance of security on the border, what policies or procedures have you had to implement to cover for that?
Well, again, it goes back to where the honorable judge is talking about the absence of the state. We have the absence of the federal government. One thing I'll say, I think it's important to your question is, I work with many Border Patrol agents, federal agents, and to date, I have not heard one say that it's working. The morale, the frustration they feel, the frustration we feel, and let's not forget, we all serve communities in this country. We've had to step up our game. Again, when you look at 40 to 44% of all your crime is coming through the border. In my rural county, I don't have the pleasure or the resources like El Paso, which is urban in nature, that we've had to step up, and thanks to Governor Ducey and our state legislative folks, the $4.3 million, they're helping me pay those bills. In a rural county, that's a huge impact. When it comes to our interdiction teams, our camera system, you name it, the state's helping us.
I'm out of time. I yield back, but I thank you for your service and all those brave men and women who are serving in that impossible
Congressman.
situation. Yield back.